christiangeekcentral.com.
Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about proximity? Stick around and find out. Bwah, 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 bwah. Bwah, 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 bwah. Bwah, 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 bwah. Bwah, 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 bwah. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review. I'm going to get pizza sauce on my signs. Uncut review of Proximity. The IMDb synopsis for this one reads, a young NASA JPL scientist is abducted by extraterrestrials, but when no one believes his story, he becomes obsessed with finding proof, which leads him on a journey of discovery. Yeah, what is this animal? It's an interesting movie as a curiosity. It's going to be a hard one for me to recommend. The script, it doesn't seem to have a consistent direction all the way through. I mean, in the opening scene, the main character is dealing with of the apparently fairly recent death of his father, which also maybe involved some kind of accident. He is said to be healing both physically and emotionally, and he talks to a therapist, and she talks to him about, you know, some things that he can do to help heal emotionally. And so that's kind of like where we start this character. And then he has this alien experience and this abduction experience, and for a while we're wondering, is this real? Is this not real? He kind of becomes a media sensation, and I was like, what kind of movie is this? Is this going to be more like Fire in the Sky, where that whole movie is asking the question, did this really happen? What's really going on? And we're just dealing with the after effects of the abduction. But no, it then, after being that movie for a little while, shifts and changes into something that really clearly seems inspired by 80s sci-fi movies. In fact, the opening credits and the opening sequence felt like, well, it takes place in the late 70s, you know, when Star Wars was released, and some of these famous sci-fi movies, you know, were really taking Hollywood by storm. And the opening credits, you see the title, Proximity, come flying at the screen in letters that look very much like what you would see in the 80s, especially from a movie like Superman, with the blue letters that fly in at you, you know. So, and the score, which I'll talk about a little bit later, very John Williams-y in terms of its style. Lots of orchestral stuff, very kind of melodramatic. So, and this director is also known for his visual effects work. Eric DeMussy, I think is maybe how you say his name. He's known for his visual effects work on several episodes of Stranger Things, and so it seems to me that he likely has a passion for that 80s movie aesthetic. And I believe this is his first feature film. I could be wrong. I know he's done some shorts before this, which I have not seen, just looking at IMDb. Anyway, the story then becomes kind of this 80s kids on the run from the evil government agents kind of thing, except they're not kids, they're young adults, you know, they have careers and lives and stuff. So and I wonder if that was kind of hurting the attempt at bringing out that vibe for me. I don't know. There was there was definitely some stylistic choices being made, but in general, the way the movie was shot, even though there's some interesting angles now and then, so I don't want to say the way the movie was shot. I don't know if it was the film type that they were using, or the lighting maybe was a major component. Every scene seemed to be very cleanly lit from all directions, as opposed to having light that more strikingly came from particular directions, casting shadows and creating kind of a visual, moody kind of look to it, you know. So there was something felt very standard about the visual look of a lot of the shots, even though they had some interesting angles now and then. They used slow-mo and other things now and then. There was something about it that felt very standard to me that didn't work with the really dramatic melodrama of the score and the John Williams vibe that it was conjuring. So yeah, then the kids are on the run from the kids, quote unquote, are on the run from the government, and they meet these characters that I think are supposed to be kind of colorful, quirky characters, but I don't think that the performers really were going at that hard enough, as a choice between them and the director, or maybe it just wasn't in their skill set to go at it hard enough. I don't know the reason, but I felt from the script and some of the punchlines and stuff, oh, this is supposed to be, I think, a more quirky character than the performance is indicating to me. So, yeah, the performances I didn't think were like bad. It wasn't like stilted wooden acting. It just felt very standard to me, and the script seemed more of a time period and a style that I would expect and want performances that were just more striking, weird, quirky, interesting. I don't know. Anyway, so the visuals I thought were well, actually, let me talk just briefly about the script a little bit more. The characters all felt a little bit simplistic to me. The bad guys, the government agents and stuff, felt very much out of E.T. They are just these one-note kind of villains. And the characters, the quirky characters they would run into, it's like, okay, they got this. This is kind of their shtick, I think, maybe. But they weren't... The scripting, the dialogue felt overly simplistic. It felt like from another time. But the other stylistic elements, performances, and the shooting style and stuff like that just didn't seem to bring that home for me. And so the final result was dialogue that felt unrealistic and unmotivated, and I didn't understand the logic of it, why these characters would sometimes say certain things or do certain things. So I gotta say I was disappointed in both the structure, the skeleton of the story, because I didn't get a sense of thematically where it was going, or in terms of character arc where it was going. I thought that we were going to get kind of a payoff for where the main protagonist starts with dealing with the death of his father and with some kind of accident that he survived recently that he's still healing from. I thought we were going to get some kind of catharsis for him, even though we're dealing with all these crazy sci-fi concepts. You know, I thought it would be tied in some way. And there was like some existential type questioning that the main character did toward the end of the movie, but it wasn't consistent throughout. It seemed like suddenly like, okay, I'm going to start being existential and asking existential questions. And then there was like another element brought in that you've got to watch my spoiler car video that I'm going to be putting up today for patrons. I'll put it out on the main Christian Geek Central YouTube channel in a few more weeks, but if you don't mind being spoiled, or if you've seen the movie already, you've got to come back. There's like this major left turn, hard yank the car off the cliff kind of left turn that really surprised me. Anyway, as far as the visuals and the stunts, there was some cool stuff going on in here. There was some very striking kind of costuming. Again, I think because of the lighting and the way these things were presented, it felt a little... I don't know. I don't want to say cheap. The movie did not necessarily seem cheap. In fact, the visual effects, some of them were really nice, the digital effects, which doesn't surprise me because the director's background is in visual effects. There was maybe one scene with some floating silverware that looked fake to my eye, and my eye is cursed to always pick out CG, you know, almost always, no matter how good it looks. But I have to say that the aliens in this movie, which you see the first one early on, looked surprisingly good. I mean, they looked pretty solid. I mean, I can see little telltale signs of CG, but, you know, my eye again is cursed. So I think as far as standards go, the aliens here looked pretty good. I think part of that is because they don't move very quickly. They don't move a lot. Motion capture can really be a tell. For me, if something is digital or not, the more we see them trying to show gravity at play, the more I'm going to spot things that are, you know, looking fake because of how they move. But the aliens did not move very much at all, and I think that helped their presentation. So let's talk about the score. Like I said, very John Williams inspired. I'll just kind of maybe reiterate what I said before, essentially, that it felt very melodramatic compared to what was going on in the scenes, compared to just the action taking place. I was expecting much more epic, sweeping, like helicopter type, you know, shots, you know, or I guess drones would be what they would use today. Big, sweeping, cinematic moments to go with this music that was so over the top, you know. And so it effectively conjured the sounds of those classic sci-fi movies, but with what was going on visually, it didn't seem to match to me. It always felt at odds with what I was seeing visually and what I was getting from performances and things like that. There were also some times where the voices were mixed a little bit too low, and I was like, is this supposed to be a background conversation where they're just kind of muttering? I'm not really supposed to be tracking with this. I mean, I can make out what they're saying, but it's really sitting deep in the audio mix. And so just in general, there was some issues with the audio elements of this movie that really took me out of it a lot. I wonder if it would have been a very different experience, and one that I would have received better if the score alone would have been approached in a completely different way. Now, as far as themes, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in this experience that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? Yes. And I can't talk about it because it comes at a huge moment near the end, and it is so surprising and off the rails that they would go in this direction, and it's a moment that is here and gone, and I'm like, we're really not going to talk about what just happened, what they just talked about, whose name they brought up. We're not going to explore that any further. It was a crazy moment that didn't feel led up to and didn't feel dealt with after the fact. It was just like, hey, boom, here's this idea, out of nowhere, and now back to your regularly scheduled movie. Whoa. So anyway, please watch my spoiler car video whenever you're able to get access to it. It's a moment, here's what I'll say, it's a moment that, even though by this point in the movie I'd really lost a lot of interest in the experience, really caught my attention just prior to this moment. The character starts asking these existential questions about, is there meaning to life, or is it all just random, whatever? And then we have this moment that really makes me strongly suspect that this writer-director is a Christian. And I'll just have to leave it at that. Such an interesting turn. And I would believe that this is as far as I know, it's an independent movie. And I think a moment like that would not make the cut in a movie that was going to be, distributed by a major distributor. The moment, this big left turn off the cliff, shocking moment, it would not have made the cut. A major distributor would have said, no. And I think likewise, a major distributor would have said of much of the movie, we got to trim, we got to re-edit, this is not working, it's not focused. It felt in many ways kind of like a first draft script that then they shot, So, and that moment was just, wow. Anyway, I wish I could tell you more. I got to leave it at that for now. I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I would go back in time and say, Pater. Oh man, skip this one. But watch for this director's next movie. Hopefully he'll get a chance to make another feature film, because you're going to be very curious to see what this kind of director who would have this kind of a moment, like the one I'm talking about, in this movie, what he might want to say, what kind of messages he might want to put out there in films, and to make more, big sci-fi movies that have a totally different take on some very significant issues that are only going to come from someone that is at least open to considering the truth of Christianity. Again, I don't know if this director is a Christian or not, but watching this movie makes me think, well, he's got to at least be open. Wow. Anyway, it's not rated. I would describe it as PG-ish for sure, for very light kind of violence, kind of fantasy, sci-fi type of violence, and some very, very mild, rough language. And there you have it. Right now, I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. Very poorly this time. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, where my tonality is sitting. I never know
without create to say how much I appreciate J.D. Myers, Drew Rubb, Olin D. Branham, Winston Crutchfield, Gabriel Stinson, Brian Franklin Lee Bray. This is terrible. I don't know what this voice is that I'm doing. I was almost going for a robot thing when I started because there's kind of robots in this movie, but thank you for supporting me and SBB and CGC. And now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Want to hear your name in song? Check out our page on Patreon.
You're on a run screaming from my page on Patreon at this point. But those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected and be notified when that spoiler car video goes up on the Christian Geek Central YouTube channel. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Then, of course, I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing, so I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening.